Hare His Divine Grace Abhay Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Remsukho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. गंगामय जमुनामय की जय. भक्ति देवी तुलसी देवी की जय. कलियुग पावन हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय. गौर प्रेमानंदे. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Jnanatimirandasya ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्. वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च. श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितंश्च. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने. नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात्देशितारणे. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते. तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्त वृंदा. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So last 2 days back we were discussing about responsible love, and we discussed the story of Draupadi and her attempt to disrobe and her response to how she responded that and how she asked question to Krishna. And we also discussed from the Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto, wherein Lord Vishnu, when he saw the 4 Kumaras were offended by the 2 gatekeepers, and how Lord Vishnu took complete responsibility of the misbehavior of his associates, to the extent where he said that I am willing to lop off my arm. And he also explained how the white leprosy in any part of the body, causes a kind of a disfigure to the body. Similarly, any mistake made by the servant, it's seen in the character of the master. And we also discussed how Prabhupada, one senior disciple, said that as a gentleman, if Krishna does it, certainly being Krishna's pure devotee, a devotee will also take the responsibility. And we discussed certain aspects from the Bhagavad Gita also, wherein Krishna talks about the concept of Nishkam Karma. And if we see whether it is material life or spiritual life, the Vedantic point of view or Gita's point of view is that there is no separation. From Krishna's perspective, it is one energy. They have to be seen from an integrated approach, not an isolated approach. There is Iha and Para. Iha means this world, that is Prapancha, and Para means Paramartha, otherworldliness. So when we live in this world, we are forced to be responsible to this world also. If you are not responsible to this world, in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada explains in regards to the story of Dhruva Maharaj. He says, what is success? He says, success means where there is some kind of happiness, some satisfaction in here. And that very satisfaction gives stability to life. And therefore it becomes easier to practice Krishna consciousness. So there is a combination of the two. I was sharing with somebody, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was teaching Krishna consciousness of the highest order, the best of the pure devotional service he taught. But in Jagannath Puri, he had already taken sannyas. And after taking sannyas, he tells Shivanand Sen. Shivanand Sen was one of his sponsors in regards to Mahaprabhu's followers coming to Jagannath Puri every year. Lots of devotees would come to Jagannath Puri, and Shivanand Sen was a big baniya, big businessman, so he would sponsor devotees, staying, their food, their prasadam, their travelling, and then also giving money to the tour booth. That is also explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Mahaprabhu once he told Shivanand Sen about Vasudev Dutt. Vasudev Dutt was very generous, very charitable. Whatever money he had, he would give it to, the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Lord Chaitanya called Shivanand Sen. That is very responsible. He called Shivanand Sen. He said, this Vasudev Dutt is very, very charitable. He gives all his money to everybody. He said, if he keeps on giving all his money to everybody, how will he maintain his family? So therefore Mahaprabhu said, he told Shivanand Sen, Sarakela Hoya. He said, you become secretary of Vasudev Dutt, help him manage his finances so that, he can provide to his family members. Again in the Chaitanya Charitamrita we see, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was performing his pastimes, he would go through different kinds of ecstatic symptoms. One was external, one was semi-conscious, and one was completely unconscious stage. And if you go and see in Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu's room is very small, Gambhira. And in his ecstatic symptoms, sometimes what he would do, he would actually rub his face to the wall. And he would hurt himself. So then Sarup Damodar Goswami and other devotees decided that we need someone to take care of Mahaprabhu when he is inside the room. So they appointed Shankar Pandit, who was the brother of Jagadanand Pandit, to be with Mahaprabhu inside Gambhira. Whenever he does that, so that he can actually protect Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he would do it in his ecstatic symptoms. And what Shankar Pandit would do, whenever Mahaprabhu would try to rub his face, he would hold him. He would try to stop him. And mostly Lord Chaitanya would be, in his ecstatic symptoms, chanting different verses of the Bhagavatam. And meanwhile Shankar Pandit, he would sit down and slowly doze off. That's what the security guard do. No. So in the night time he would actually feel sleepy, because it is not normal to stay up in the late night. So when he would go to sleep, it's very interesting how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is absorbed in ecstatic symptoms of Krishna. But when you would see that the Shankar Pandit is falling asleep, he would take out his uttariya and he would cover the body of Shankar Pandit, because everyone who sleeps, he requires a shawl, just to cover his body, because the wind would blow from the ocean of Jagannath Puri. So because he was in ecstatic symptoms doesn't mean that he would forget the world. He would forget the devotees. Therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that love of God, it manifests in three ways. Because Krishna's love cannot be impractical. Krishna's love cannot be only focused on one aspect of life. Krishna is all pervading. Therefore Krishna's love also has to be all effective. It has to be all pervading. It cannot be one-sided. So therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that if someone loves Krishna, or Krishna loves someone, there is a complete reciprocation. And he explains that love manifests in three ways. To the superiors, it becomes surrender or submissiveness. To the juniors, it becomes service. And to the equals, it becomes friendship. He said that's how you can understand love in this world. If I love fellow devotees, if I make friendship with fellow devotees, that is love. If I serve the subordinates, that is love. And if I am submissive to superiors, that is love. Otherwise, love without these things becomes simply imagination. Therefore Prabhupada said bhakti is not feeling. Bhakti is active engagement. Just feeling, because we have our mind, we have our body, and we have our words also. So there bhakti, there is a feeling, no doubt, but feeling is complete when there is engagement in Krishna service. Therefore Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he explains to Arjuna very beautifully that tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam manusmara yuddhacha. It's very interesting. It's a combination of helplessness and enterprising. Because when we exhibit helplessness, and if there is no action, many times helplessness is very close to hopelessness. In helplessness there is action, in hopelessness there is no action. It creates nishkriyata. Nishkriyata means there is no action, there is a depression. One becomes a vegetable. He finds nothing in his life, now or in the future. But somebody is helpless, but he finds hope in Krishna. And because he finds hope in Krishna, what does he do? He is enterprising, he is very active, he is very dynamic. So therefore what Krishna speaks here is very practical also, that there is struggle, there is war. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhacha. There is smaran and there is yuddha also. This is the biggest difficulty for many people, that how can someone who is doing something can be helpless? If you are performing duty, if you are active, there is a tendency of being karta, I am the doer, aham karta, aham bhogi. If you are active, then you become karta, and if you become karta, then there is ahankar, and because of ahankar, you cannot think that I am not the doer. Many times we see when we travel, I travel a lot in the bus party doing book distribution, and all over the trucks, and sometimes they would put this slogan, work is worship. Sometimes they would put it in English, sometimes they would put in their own language. Kaam hi Bhagwan hai. Work is worship. Like that. And they would say, the one Prime Minister of India, he said, the problem with India was because too much of dependence on God. When you depend on God, then you become inactive. Arey Bhagwan dekh lenge, God will take care. So there is no enterprising thing. But Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak like that. Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak about Daivavad. Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak about Karmavad. Daivavad means you artificially depend on God where you do not perform any duty. And Karmavad means actually I am the doer. I don't need God. If I do my duty, everything will come. Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak about karma. Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak about Daiva. Bhagavad Gita speaks about the sangam of these two things. It's a combination of these two things. Why? Because the living entity is responsible. He has his duty. Therefore Lord Chaitanya, when he told this to Sanatana Goswami asked this question, what is the duty of the living entity? Now, who am I? So Lord Chaitanya said, Jivera Swarupo Nityara Krishna Das. Because living entity is eternal servant of God, Krishna, just because he is servant, what happens? The next stage is that there is action. A servant means there is action. A servant means there is service. So therefore there is a responsibility. So Krishna says there is smaran which denotes helplessness, but there is also action which denotes servitorship. Otherwise, the concept of God where God has taken contract about our needs and cares, our challenges, and He does everything for us and we go to sleep. That is not responsibility. After hearing the entire Bhagavad Gita, actually Bhagavad Gita in one sense is over in 1857, wherein Krishna says, Iti te guhyatamam. This knowledge is very confidential. Because every chapter, after every conclusion of chapter, iti, the verse is thus. The 16th chapter is over, which entitled as demonic and divine nature. Then the next chapter starts. So after speaking all that to Arjuna, Krishna saw that Arjuna was still not confident about his responsibilities, his duties. And what did Krishna tell? Krishna said, now I am going to speak you most confidential, whatever I have not spoken. And basically the Lord was telling, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, he said, don't worry Arjun, now you just surrender unto me. Forget if you have not understood anything, don't worry, just surrender unto me, that do not fear. In fact, Acharya says that, Arjuna was crying because he was still confused. And Krishna said, don't worry, don't cry, I am there for you, I will take care of you. So when Krishna said that to Arjuna, that I will take care of you, just surrender unto me, what happened? Arjuna did not go back to the chariot and slept nicely. Yes, now you take responsibility of my life, I will go and sleep. In fact, by hearing those words, Arjuna became overwhelmed with gratitude. That Krishna is willing to do so much for me, so therefore it is my responsibility to reciprocate with the Lord. So this Sharanagati, what Krishna spoke, is Krishna's compassion and love for Arjuna. And in response to Krishna's love and compassion, Arjuna was responsible and grateful. Otherwise it is not bhakti. In bhakti, what happens? There is a competition between God and devotee. And what is the competition? The competition is that devotee wants to serve God, and God wants to serve devotee more than devotee wants to serve. Otherwise it is one-sided. Bhakti means reciprocation. That Krishna is conquered by his devotee and devotee is conquered by Krishna. There is a reciprocation. Otherwise it is not bhakti. Yeah, Krishna will provide as Paramatma. Krishna will provide as Vishnu, whatever we need as a living entity. But that is not called as bhakti. Sometimes people ask this question. We see those who are not serving God, they are always provided more. And that is true also. God says, these guys are outsiders, let them take. No, he's a very refined person. So he gives them also, knowing very well that they will not reciprocate with love. So it's a very interesting concept. So Gita, talks about nishkama karma even in the ordinary life. If you read the 12th chapter wherein Krishna speaks about 4 kinds of devotees, 12.8 to 12.11, he says that one should be completely attached to Krishna. Mayyeva mana adastvam mayi buddhi niveshaya. Total 24 hours. Then the Lord says, because one cannot do that ordinarily, we are not on that level, and somebody is not on that level, what does he say? He says, perform bhakti in a regulated way. Chant your rounds in the morning, or if you can manage, chant in the morning, chant in the afternoon, chant in the evening. That's how people used to live their life originally. Therefore Chanakya Pandit explains. He says, Prata Dyuta Prasangena, Madhyana Stri Prasangad, Ratrau Chaura Prasangena, Kale Gacchati Dhimata. He says the intelligent people, they spend their morning time listening to gambling match. Afternoon they spend their time talking about women, and in the night time they talk about robbery. He said they are intelligent people. So that means he says Mahabharata in the morning, Ramayana in the afternoon, and Bhagavatam in the night. Therefore Prabhupada said when you are sleeping, before you take rest, take hot milk and discuss Krishna Katha. So the life was divided in such a way that whatever you do, Krishna is there. Krishna is there in the morning, Krishna is there in the afternoon, Krishna is there in the evening. And then he says, if you cannot do that also, that shows how Krishna is liberal in regards to giving an opportunity for the living entities. If you cannot do that also, it is not possible for you to do that, then what you do? At least offer the results of your action. Some part of your results. You have 4 apples, give 1 to Krishna. If you have 3 apples, give half to Krishna. If you have 100 rupees or you have $100, give something to Krishna. He is happy with that. In fact, the Lord is so magnanimous. He doesn't mind how much you keep back. Yes, we should mind how much I am keeping back, giving so less to Krishna. But Krishna is happy, receiving something from a devotee. I remember one book distributor, Prabhupada disciple, was telling once. This was in 1970s when the Radha Damodar bus party would travel. And he was there personally. He told this story. When he was telling this story which happened in 1970, he told me this story in 2005 when I was traveling. He said, I can't forget this story. It's so vivid, so clear in my mind. They were traveling, and then at one place, the bus stopped, and there were deities of Radha Damodar, and the pujari was offering arati to the deities. And one American 3-year-old boy came there. He was fascinated to see a golden doll. They are offering lamb, they are offering incense, they are ringing the bell, and he kept on watching. And he was eating hamburger. And when he saw the pujari offer the flower, after offering the flower, he placed those flowers at the feet of the Lord, and then he did the arati. So this boy saw, he's placing something at the feet. So he ran to his garden, and this another devotee was watching all this. He was watching the puja, and he was watching this boy also. Apparently somebody comes to your temple, Radha Damodar outside, eating a hamburger. You will say, get out, this is not the place to eat. So what this boy did, he went to his close by garden and plucked few leaves and flowers from his left hand. And he came running and he threw like this. And when he said that, when he threw that, he said, I can't forget that. When the flowers were thrown by this young boy, 3-year-old boy, the flowers landed at the feet of Radha Damodar. So this incident created a lasting impact in a devotee's heart, who is just a new brand practicing devotee, but his heart was touched by this action. So he was saying, can you imagine how much Krishna must have felt? How much he must have felt? Oh, somebody out of ignorance, just imitation is doing it. But if this can affect the heart of a devotee, how much that will affect the heart of Krishna? Therefore, Rupa Goswami talks this so much. So Krishna is very responsible. He understands, okay, he may not be able to do. Then he says, if you cannot do that also, if you cannot offer the fruits of your activities, then what you do? At least offer for some good cause. God is not involved. Krishna is not involved. Devotional service is not involved. But what is involved? The act of giving. The act of giving is involved. And because the act of giving is involved, it is not a very good thing. It's a very indirect one. But we are just discussing about Krishna's magnanimity. He does not allow anyone to go outside the zone of rendering service. Either it is direct one, and if you cannot, find something good cause and do good. So therefore, the Lord told all the Brahmanas, the boys, his friends, he said, hey boy, just see these trees they are so magnanimous. What do? They are actually giving their barks, their fruits, their shade to living entities. Aho esham varam janma. He said the tree's life is so magnanimous, they are so fortunate that every part of their body is being utilized for rendering service. So just see how Krishna's vision is. He is extremely responsible for bringing back the living entities. And therefore he creates this material world. Again, if you go back to the past time, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after taking sannyas, he comes to Mother Sachi Mata. Some other Nityanand Prabhu and Nityanand Prabhu tricked him to come to Navadvip. And when he came there, Mahaprabhu's mother met, Sachi Mata met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when she saw Mahaprabhu taking sannyas, he had lost his hair, he had given up his hair, beautiful curly hair. And she was overwhelmed. And what did Lord Chaitanya tell her? Now this is a very serious thing. Mahaprabhu told her, he said, if you desire, he said, out of madness I took sannyas. I don't know what I did. I just took sannyas out of madness. If you want me to come back, I will come and stay with you. Now that's a very serious. He had just taken sannyas. And in those times, after taking sannyas, going home means it's like worse than committing suicide. You'll be ostracized. And what does Mahaprabhu's mother do? She could have told, if she was selfish personally, my son and me, I don't care what people talk about him. I don't care what happens to his name and fame. As long as he is with me. She could have thought like that. And Mahaprabhu's mother, even though it was a great pain for her to see Lord Chaitanya take sannyas, she said, my son, I cannot see that. I cannot see people saying something to you, even though it is more painful to be away from you, but I can't stand people criticizing you, so therefore you cannot stay here. How can you come back? So better you stay in Jagannath Puri, which is like, another room in the same house, so that I can keep hearing about your news. Rather than going to Vrindavan, you stay here. So we are discussing in one place. If Lord Chaitanya's mother would have told Mahaprabhu, Chal beta ghar aaja, come home, what would Mahaprabhu do? Would he say, Hare, I was only joking with you. I was simply following an etiquette. No, it was not very serious thing. Because whatever he speaks, it is a serious business. It is not just for the sake of saying like that. It's a serious thing. And Lord Chaitanya's mother is also equally serious as her son. she had a greater renunciation in one sense. For Mahaprabhu to renounce this world is not a big deal. But to Mahaprabhu's mother to renounce her son, whom she loved so much, is much more a greater renunciation. Because what is there in this world for Lord Chaitanya to be attached to? There is nothing. It's easier for him. But for Mahaprabhu's mother to renounce Lord Chaitanya is not very easy. But she was seeing from another perspective also. There was a responsibility. There is a feeling that how can I do this for my son? So therefore we see that when there are resources given to living entity, there is a responsibility also. Less resources, less responsibility. More resources, more responsibility. When we have less resources, it is but understood. We can't expect higher values of life from those people where the resources are less. The intellectual resources, the emotional resources, the social resources, the financial resources, the spiritual understanding. Because the resources are less. So what do you expect from them? But someone who has been given so much more, and if they misbehave, the effect of that misbehavior creates a wrong legacy. Yesterday I was sharing with brahmacharis, if you study the history of India, there are 4 Varnas, right? 4 Varna, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. I think somewhere Bhaktivedanta Thakur mentions about this. Then what happened was, when Brahmanas, not everybody, but a good number of Brahmanas became proud of their purity. One can be proud of anything. One can be so pure and could be proud of their purity. And when they became proud of their purity, rather than being compassionate to those who are not pure, rather than being compassionate to those who are fallen, they started ostracizing them. You are sinful, you are bad, you stay away from us, you are disqualified, you are no good. So sometimes purity creates a harshness in the heart. Sometimes purity creates desensitization. Sometimes purity creates isolation. Those who are very pure, they start becoming isolated from the real world. To the extent, sometimes even so-called sadhus also. When I was sharing again, when we used to travel in the bus party in some places, in Maharashtra, mostly we traveled in Maharashtra. During the summer season, the peak of the summer, almost like in the month of May, in the villages you don't find water, even to use for responding to the call of nature. People get water once in 5 days. They use soil, they can't afford tissue paper, and there is no water also. And there is no water for their cows also. When there is no water for the human beings, there is no water for their children, what to speak of giving a large bucket of water to a cow or a bull. It's a very difficult situation. And if as a sadhu I go and preach to them, Hare, you're not taking care of your cows. You know what, if the cows are killed, you'll have hair on the body. As many hairs are there on the body, that many times you'll be killed as a cow. It doesn't make any sense to him. Because the reality of life for him is that he cannot afford water for his own family members. So therefore what does he do? Unconsciously just allows the cows to go away. He cannot take care. And then some butchers will come and they slaughter it. Along with the statement what somebody says that this is what will happen, do we create a facility for them to take care of the cows? Therefore in the Ramayana, Lord Ram told Bharat, very beautiful, Bharat was told by Lord Ram how to govern, how to rule. how to manage. Because if there is no good management, then there is no good spiritual practices also. Very rare people can do. So Lord Ram told Bharat, he said, my dear Bharat, Dharma should not destroy Artha. And Artha should not destroy Dharma. They should be interconnected. One's Dharma should be practiced in such a way that one's a minimum sustainability should not be disturbed for general mass of people. And if you are practicing Artha, Artha should not destroy your Dharma. They are interconnected. One goes for economic development at the cost of destroying Dharma. That is very bad. And one practices isolated Dharma, not an integrated Dharma. That is also very bad. Therefore, in the Bhagavatam, when Sudama came to Krishna on behalf of his wife, he did not come on his own. He did not come, okay, my children are suffering. Sudama, Jiva Goswami explains, our Acharyas explain that Sudama was poor not because he was Krishna's devotee. He was poverty stricken not because somebody had cursed him. He was poverty stricken because he had chosen to live like that. He was finding some sense gratification there. I am so poor. I am such a poor Brahmana and I don't depend on anybody. And when he was doing like that, unconsciously, not consciously, he had great love for Krishna, unconsciously he was putting his family members in some difficulty. Jiva Goswami writes that. And he says there was a last trace of anartha in Sudama, that was the pride of his poverty. Can you imagine? He said there was the pride of his poverty. Therefore, when he came to Krishna, what did Krishna do? Krishna gave abundant wealth to him. He said, this is a purification for you. No, you are so proud of your wealth, proud of your poverty, this is a purification for you. Go and use this. And be freed from this anartha of being, I am the greatest poor personality. So just see that how sometimes even a good thing with a improper maturity can lead to a problem in life. One can offend because of love also. Sometimes you offend because of arrogance. One can offend out of love also. Therefore Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Sachi Mata offended Advaita-charya, right, because her older son took sannyas and the younger was ready for it. And she became very disturbed. What is this? This Advaita is Dvaita only. He talks, he is Advaita, but he is dual. And then Lord Chaitanya arranged in such a way that Sachi Mata had to beg forgiveness. In the Ramayana also, it is explained. Now this is one of the biggest questions people ask in India. He said, how can we forgive Ram? Ram, you forgive? Who are you to forgive Lord Ram? They say Lord Ram, he performed this activity of banishing Mother Sita or doing Agni Pariksha for her. After being so away from Lord Ram for so many months, when she comes to meet with Lord Ram, what does Lord Ram do? Doesn't even look at her. He says, hey look, to protect my Kula, protect my Raghu Kula, I fought this war. I killed Ravan to prove the family tradition. Now wherever you want to go, you can go. No? He told that to Mother Sita. If you read that part of the Ramayana, it's very painful. And whenever people without sensitive understanding of the scriptural, the culture, they say, what is this? They said, we can handle Krishna. No. But Ram is so cruel. How can you do like this? But the Acharyas explained it was not Lord Ram was testing Mother Sita. He was proving her purity to everybody. That is one aspect. Another aspect was when the Marich, the golden deer, called out, hey Lakshman, hey Sita, hey Lakshman, hey Sita. Sita had one response. and Lakshmana had another response. The response of Sita was care, concern. Something must have happened to Lord Ram. And what was Lakshmana's response? Lakshmana's response was confidence. He said, nothing will happen to Ram. Just see, both heard the voice. One is Lakshmi and one is Balram. But there is a conflict between the two. One is seeing from a concern point of view and one is seeing from the confidence point of view. Sita said, go immediately. Something must have happened to Lord Ram. Can't you hear that he is calling out your name and my name? There must be some problem. Lakshman said, there can be no problem to Lord Ram. He said, you just saw, 14,000 Rakshasas were killed in 40 minutes. Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Charanas, demigods, everybody put together, they cannot do anything to Lord Ram. That was the confidence of Lakshman. And what does Sita say? She said, I know why you are here all these years. When there is too much of concern, there is a panic. And out of panic, what happens? Outburst is there, which is illogical. And in that illogical outburst, caused by affection to Lord Ram, she unconsciously offended Lakshman. But it was an offense. What was it? She said, you are here so that you can enjoy me. You are waiting Ram to die. But that can never happen. I will tie a rock in my neck and drown in the river, but I will never become yours. Lakshman closed his ears. He said, my God. He said, how could you speak this? And what was the precedent? For 13 years, Lakshman had served Sita and Sita is accusing. Was her accusation real? Was her accusation substantial? Was her accusation had any logic and reason? No, there was only concern and love for Ram. But that love and concern made her to create, again this is a pastime for us to understand, that she offended Lakshman to such an extent she actually questioned his integrity. He had such a high integrity, so Lakshman was questioned by Sita about his integrity. So Lakshman had to be running away from there. Even the Lord Ram had told him that never move out of this place. And when he went to Ram, Ram said, come on, I had told him not to come. So Lord Ram questioned his competence. No? So when your master, one is questioning your competence and one is questioning your integrity, what you should do? Commit suicide only. But Lakshman continues to render service. So the Ramayana says, because Sita had, like Sachimata had offended Advaita-Acharya, Mahaprabhu made her beg forgiveness. Similarly, in Ram Lila, Sita had offended Lakshman. Therefore, it was an Agni Pariksha. It was an accusation for her purity, because she questioned the purity of Lakshman. And the same Lakshman, when Bharat came to look for Lord Ram, to bring Lord Ram back to Ayodhya. And when Lakshman climbed that sal tree, and when he saw the flag of Bharat, he was so angry, he was so upset. He said, this entire Chitrakoot mountain today will see the blood of Ayodhya Vasis. I will kill all of them. So what happened? Here Lakshman, out of affection for Ram, he misunderstood Bharat. To the extent where he was willing to kill Bharat. And out of love for Ram. So just see, love has to be responsible. If love is emotionally surcharged and there is no reason and logic, this kind of love can create offenses towards others. Even the good things, if they are not maturely utilized, purity is good, but purity can lead to contamination as the Brahmanas. We are coming back to that point. So what happened? So Brahmanas started living an isolated life. And because of their purity, they could analyze, oh, these are impure, oh, these are dirty. They are not following the scripture rule. So analyzing people's sin was very easy for them. So ostracizing them became very easy. And therefore what happened? The Kshatriyas became Buddhist. Bhaktivedanta Thakur explains the entire beginning with Lord Ashoka, and the great king Ashoka, he became Buddhist. When the king became non-violent for everything, A Raja has to use violence for the right reason. But when a king becomes non-violent, then the governance becomes very weak. And he also explained the Vaishyas, the wealthy merchant, they became giants. So when the Brahmanical culture loses the protection of the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanical culture loses the sponsorship of the Vaishyas, then what happens? They become actually beggars of the highest order. And in the modern world, because the Brahmanas, I am not saying the Brahmanical culture, some Brahmanas, when they misbehaved with the Shudras, and that created another movement. So when you don't have your power who work for you, your sponsors, the wealth power and the administrative power, then what happens? The Brahmanical culture becomes weak, does not sustain. There is no facility for a legacy to provide. Therefore, as we were mentioning other day, that atheism is not there logically. Atheism is always there experientially. When there is a wrong experience given by the theistic people, we also study in Christianity the whole concept of confession. In the Europe, this entire movement of Protestant came to being. Why? Because these so-called priests, they would give high price. If you have made sin, okay, your sin can be absolved based upon how much money you give. If you give bigger money, the sin is faster eradicated. If your money is less, then slowly sin will be eradicated. Then the whole thing, the Protestant movement came, and then from there only, because of the Lord's misbehavior, the communism came. So for every wrong behavior by the good people, there is a reaction. Just like if you eat mangoes, too many mangoes, what happens? You get boils. May not be on your tongue, but on the other part of the body. Somewhere it has to be exposed. In India, the Naxalite movement is there. Why Naxalite movement is there? Because the landlord exploited. So this is how the material world functions. When there is action which is abusive, and then the reaction is also similarly performed. Therefore, when we study Krishna's character, Krishna's character is a character of being extremely responsible. Now we hear that story that one time one person was sitting in his home with his family, and suddenly somebody knocked at the door. And the person who knocked at the door, he was looking for a shelter, and he came inside because his host allowed him to come in, and he fed him food. And he said, look, God is so merciful, right? God is so kind. He allowed you to come in. He's feeding you, you are in difficulty. And the guest was not at all God conscious person, rather he was an atheist. He said, what are you talking about God? There is no God, all bogus. I don't believe in God. And this man was very theistic, and he couldn't take. He remembered a scripture that somebody is offensive, grab his collar and throw him out. So what he did, he actually grabbed him. He said, you rascal, I gave you food. I am God's person, and you are speaking all this nonsense. He grabbed him and threw him out. And he heard the voice of God. He said, I am feeding millions of such people. And you can't even feed one person. Can you imagine that how much compassion Krishna must be having, wherein if something goes wrong, people question God only. Why God did like this? I remember one of our devotees works in the airlines, Air India. He said one time, this happened when he was in the field. One pilot, he was flying, and the co-pilot told him, sir, there is some problem here, and you should be careful. So because the co-pilot was his junior, his ego was hurt. He said, hey, come on, you don't tell me. And the next thing was, they were in the Indian Ocean. 300 people died. So then the question is raised, why God did like this? God was speaking through this co-pilot, and the main pilot did not listen. So why you blame God? The material nature is so arranged that we also have to take responsibility. Just like Krishna is taking responsibility, a living entity also has to take responsibility. When we don't take responsibility, and if the reaction comes, it is not God's problem. In the Mahabharata, this is one of the biggest problems with Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra knew Vedanta philosophy. And Dhritarashtra also knew, how to scheme against the Pandavas. Whenever he was told by the rishis that, stop your son, he is behaving wrongly, stop him. What would he say? What can be done? It's all God's arrangement only. So when it would come to stopping his son, then he would say, it's all by the will of God. But when he was told, look, Yudhishthira Maharaj is supposed to be the king by the will of destiny, that he would not accept. That he would not say, this is God's will only. That he would try to change by trying to burn them. So Vedanta has to be used for the right reason. If the Vedanta is for the wrong reason, acting helplessly, what does it do? That is called as Ati Vedanta. That does not create a proper system. So therefore we see here that Bhagavad Gita, that Nishkama Karma eventually leads to Amnyabilashita Sunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavrita. If somebody is practicing life in such a way that he is performing his duty. Why? Because he has to perform his duty. And if he performs his duty well, he becomes, the impetus for performing duty is not the result. The impetus for performing the duty is duty itself. It is not the result. Because results are always fluctuating. But duty cannot be fluctuating. If one performs duty based upon fluctuating results, then one will not perform duty only. When I was sharing this with our school children, I'd ask them, studying in the school, is it desire or is it a need? So one boy said, it is our parents' desire. I said, no, we are not talking about parents here, we are talking about you. Studying, is it desire or a need? They said, we think it's need. And I said, getting 98%, is it desire or a need? So they started getting 98% is a desire. But studying well is a need. Then I asked next question, having a house, is it a desire or is it a need? So one child said, I think it's desire. I said, then where will you sleep? It's a need. Having a house is a need. But wanting a 7-bedroom flat, was it? They said, that is a desire. Having a job is a desire, but wanting to work in Australia is a desire. You can work in India also. Right? So just see how desire and needs are so closely connected to each other. When we become infatuated with desire and call it a need, and when that desire is not fulfilled, what do? Either we become frustrated or we blame God. So Duryodhana, leading a very prosperous life, was natural for him because he was born in a royal family. But wanting to be the king became a desire. And that very desire destroyed him. So Krishna is not talking about not performing our duties and getting our basic necessities of life. That is not a desire. That is a natural need. Food is a natural need. Eating nourishing food is a need. But eating ice cream and pizza is a desire. For some people, pizza is also, for them it is a food because they are raised in that kind of background. Eating chocolate. What is it? Children. Desire or a need? It's a desire. Now it has become need. Right? So we see that Krishna is willing to fulfill our need. But when we focus on our desires, therefore what does Upanishad say? our whole concept of Nishkam Karma begins in the Upanishad only. Upanishad explains that this whole creation of God, Om Purnam Adap Purnat Purnat Purnam Udachyate, Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. This whole creation is complete. Whatever emanates from God is also complete. And after emanating from God, whatever remains is also complete. So complete Purna has another meaning. Purna means Samagra, integrated one. It involves matter and spirit also. And then next verse explains, which is the famous verse where Prabhupada writes the purport. What is it? That a living entity, a human being, Tattva, what is that? The next verse it talks about one should accept only one's own quota. Ishavasham idam sarvam tena tektvena bhunjita. That one should accept only what belongs to oneself, and what does not belong to oneself, let it remain there only. It may sound, aisa kabhi nahi hoga, it is not possible. Somebody was asking me in one college, he said, what is the practical value of honesty? Is honesty profitable? I said, at least as an Indian you should know, dishonesty is synonymous to 270 lakh crores in the Swiss bank. If people were honest, then all that money would be there and every person would get at least 3 to 4 lakh rupees. They said, with that money, you could be progressing so much. How can you say honesty is not practical? How can you say honesty is not valuable? How can you say honesty is not workable? These are eternal principles. Satyamevi jayate, it has to be victorious. So because you are dishonest, and then he is dishonest, I am dishonest, everybody is dishonest, but then overall effect of that dishonesty is what? Then it affects everybody. As simple as that. So Krishna begins in the Upanishad that perform your duty in such a way that it should not turn into be unlimited desires. It should remain a need. And from there Krishna speaks to Arjuna, as we were discussing. Nowhere in the Gita Krishna promises to Arjuna that he will be victorious because you are working for me. What is the victory? The victory is that whether you win or lose, you are satisfied because you are performing your duty. He doesn't guarantee. Rather, he begins the Bhagavad Gita by saying that, my dear Arjun, 2.14 is one of the best verses for us to reflect the realities of life. And he is not telling for a devotee this verse is not applicable, I will create a miracle for you. Krishna is speaking to a devotee only. And what he speaks? Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitosna sukha dukkada agama apayuna nityas tam titikshasva bharata. Again Krishna is very responsible. He does not put Arjuna in illusion. He says, my dear Arjun, life is arranged in such a way that it is like summer and winter season. It will go and come. Similarly, happiness and distress are like that. Sometimes you are happy, sometimes you are distressed. Therefore, what you have to do? You have to learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. That is the beginning. That's a key to Bhagavad Gita. If we come to Krishna, because I came to Krishna, I remember one devotee said, he said, I was studying and then I neglected my study because I became a devotee. And when the exam came, I realized, my God, I have not studied anything. And he was telling this story to some other students. And then I appeared for the exam and I passed it. And Krishna was so kind to me. I said, Baba, don't tell this kind of stories. Why? Because some other you passed and people follow in your footsteps and they don't pass, then what will happen? That is not good. Maybe the examiner was not attentive in checking your paper. That's how he passed. Give the credit to that examiner rather than bringing Krishna here. No, for your material side, you have to be responsible. After being responsible nicely and still it is difficult, then you can invoke Krishna's mercy. I did my best. Again, the Bhagavad Gita explains. Just see, the entire Bhagavad Gita is so responsibly spoken to Arjuna. There is nothing hanky-panky. There is nothing imaginary. There is nothing impractical. Krishna says there are 5 causes for every action. For every success, there is Panchaitani Mahabhav, Karanani Nibodhani. There is instrument, there is the performer, there is a place of action, and then the endeavor itself. These are the 4 immediate cause, and Krishna says the 5th cause is the remote cause, which is called as Daiva. So unless we work to bring these 4 causes, the endeavor, the place of performance, the performer and the instrument, then we cannot expect destiny to make our work successful. I have not used my instrument. I go to exam. When I am very good at studying, I have studied really good. But when I go to exam, 3 days I have not slept. I have not eaten anything. The instruments are not good. The senses are weak. And what I do? I take a pen or a pencil or a ball pen which has not been used for 3 months. And I start praying to Krishna, Krishna, please come as the ink in my ball pen. That is not going to happen because you did not take your precautions properly. I remember one devotee asked this question, when we are driving on the car, when we are driving, how fast should we go? And this devotee said, as much as the traffic signal says. As long as you drive safely, Krishna is there with you. When you are not driving safely, Krishna first moves out of the car. He said he doesn't want to stay here. Another time one devotee asked Prabhupada, she said, Prabhupada, when I am driving, can I chant Hare Krishna? So he said, either you chant Hare Krishna or you drive. Because if you chant and drive, neither you can chant nor you can drive. Both will perform accidents. You are not focusing on Krishna and you are not focusing on the road. He gave a very practical answer. So what happens when we assume that Krishna should come? We are not responsible. We misbehave in regards to because of misunderstanding. I always quote this example. You may chant 64 rounds every day without fail, but if you don't brush your teeth, it will still stink. You can't say, I am chanting Hare Krishna and Krishna is so fragrant. Why is that after chanting so many rounds still my teeth is stinking? These are 2 disconnected things. You brush your teeth and chant Hare Krishna. Then Krishna becomes very fragrant. People can tolerate you. So we see whether it is Lord Chaitanya, whether it is Lord Ram, whether it is Lord Krishna, from a practical perspective of a material life or the higher perspective of devotional service, they make us take responsibility for life. Only when our 4, this immediate cause are properly dealt with, then the destiny plays a role. When the destiny plays the role, destiny could make us successful or destiny could make us not successful. But because we have played our role properly, then there is a detachment. I have done my duty properly. And I am willing to move out of this world because I have done it properly. If Krishna did not want me to be successful, it's okay with me. But at least I know I did it right. And you learn this from the farmer. When we go to villages to preach, if you see a real traditional, theistic farmer who is not a greedy, the way they work, they know the science of how to plant their seeds. They understand Krishna gives them a lot of signals, how much rain is supposed to come, how much rain this season will come. All this knowledge they already have, very perfectly. A farmer is not the only who tills the soil. A farmer knows according to certain weather, 6 months ahead only. So then he plants accordingly. When he does all that, most of the time he is successful. He knows, okay, Krishna has been very kind, he sent me the rain. And sometimes even though he is perfect in all that, when the rains do not come, he does not get anything. And Prabhupada writes many places. What does he say? It's my destiny. So there is a greater wisdom in an illiterate person in regards to seeing the life's perspective in a proper way. He has a greater wisdom. He says, what can be done? It's my karma. I did my best, but I depended on God for the rest. It has to happen like this. If I can't eat 4 rotis, I will eat one roti. So they become a greater philosopher than the biggest philosophers. Why? Because they have done their duty. Therefore, the whole Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, it is so beautifully, it brings us to the practical level. It does not keep us on an imagination level. Therefore, Arjuna, when he heard the verse from Krishna, Sarva Dharma, he became extremely responsible. He said, if Krishna is willing to take care of me so much, he is giving such an assurance for me, then I have to fight for him. I have to work for him. And how much he fought? When he lost his son. I'll conclude with this. When Arjuna lost his son, and when Dronacharya lost his son, Dronacharya was not fighting for a higher responsibility. Dronacharya was fighting for an attachment to his son. It was not Dharma Yuddha for him. He knew what Dharma was. He knew that he was siding Adharma. He told Pandavas, he said, I am not fighting for Dharma. He said, Dharma is nobody's slave. Artha is nobody's slave, but I am the slave of the Artha. And because Artha is provided by Duryodhan, and Duryodhan, my son is attached to him, therefore I am fighting for him. When he heard, which was not true news, because his son was not supposed to die, in one sense he was Chiranjeev, but even the news of his son's death made him give up all his weapons. So that detachment is not a healthy one. That detachment was based upon attachment to his son. He was willing to give up the responsibility for his master's service. He said, I'm not going to fight. He abruptly stopped. Of course, the demigods and the rishis were telling him to stop. But he stopped once he heard that my son is dead. And therefore Krishna utilized that trick. He told Yudhishthira Maharaj, this Brahmana will not stop unless we tell him that his son is dead. Yudhishthira said, I can't tell lie. Hey, come on, he said, you gambled. That is itself is a big lie. Gambling matches itself is a lie. So don't tell all this. Just tell. No? So if you tell the lie, then your army will be protected. Dharma will be established. And what is the lie? The lie is that Dronacharya is fighting for a very, very small, selfish cause. And if you remove that cause from him, he will stop. But on the other hand, Arjuna, now who will not love Abhimanyu? Such a great character, very dear to Krishna, very favorite son of Arjun, everybody's dear nephew, Bhima, Yudhishthir, Nakul, Sahadev. When Arjuna heard the death of Abhimanyu, he cried like a baby. That is natural. Somebody asked Prabhupada this question, how can Arjuna cry after hearing the Bhagavad Gita when the death of Arjuna? Prabhupada said that is natural. Responding to the death of one son, he said is natural. But he did not stop his duty. That is important. Not crying for Abhimanyu could have been a problem. Arjuna should have been taken to hospital. After the death of son also you are not crying. Shake him a little bit. Sometimes people get so shocked. They don't cry also. And I seen one of our devotees' daughter when she was about 20-year-old, very dynamic girl. She abruptly, within few hours, she left her body. She was good and suddenly she died. And some of us, we went to their home. And the mother, when His Holiness Radhanand Maharaj also came because he knew that girl from her childhood. She was very gracious, giving water, the dead body is there. But she was still very happy that Maharaj has come to her home. Why? Because it had not dawned to her that I have no more my daughter with me. It took some time. So therefore, the pain, the lamentation is natural. So Prabhupada said that is natural. But what do you do with lamentation? That is important. So Arjuna, with the departure of his son, he did not stop his duty for Krishna because he was not fighting for his son. He was fighting for a higher cause. So there was a Nishkam karma. There was a higher goal. There was, I am fighting. But that I am fighting, the goal had become very, very big. I am fighting for myself with a very narrow, space. I am fighting for my family, another little narrow space. But I am fighting for Krishna. I am doing for Krishna. I am fighting for Krishna involves everything, because Krishna involves everything. Therefore, if certain things are disappearing from our life, we get hurt. It is painful. But that pain does not stop one from being responsible to Krishna. So Arjuna continued. After hearing the brutal death of his son, he continued to fight. And in serving Krishna, he also took revenge against those who were oppressor against Abhimanyu. So personal agenda was also involved. But that personal agenda, was a very small part compared to the wholesome agenda of serving Krishna. On the other hand, Dronacharya had a personal agenda which was whole, and the higher goal, if it was a higher goal, serving his master Duryodhan was a part. When the whole was disturbed, then the higher goal, which was very small, was disturbed, and he renounced at the wrong time. And therefore Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when we see in the Gita, in the Bhagavatam, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is extremely responsible. Therefore in Kali Yuga, why our scriptures talk about, as the living entities become more and more degraded, what does Krishna do? He becomes more compassionate. He's like a very good market person. When the business is not good, he gives a bigger discount. Nobody is coming. So what should I do? Give a bigger discount. Easy process. And that's how Lord Chaitanya came, being very responsible, more compassionate. That more degraded people in this age of Kali, the process has to be more wholesome. The process has to be more effective. The process has to be very sublime. Therefore Prabhupada said, simple but sublime. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
You mentioned how Krishna takes responsibility in his loving relationship with his devotees. How do we understand that he's apparently not able to take the responsibility of the greatest love that is offered by gopis? So he just leaves him with the statement that you will be satisfied with your service to me and that I cannot reciprocate. So how do we understand this highest love and Krishna taking responsibility of it?
So the question is how Krishna did not reciprocate with the love of gopis. He said, be satisfied with your love. For that we have to read the entire section of that section of Bhagavatam, wherein that shows another great quality of the Lord when Krishna came to the gopis after leaving from Ras Leela. When the reunion took place, the gopis asked this question, what kind of lover are you? They spoke about three kinds of lovers. The one kind of lover, they only reciprocate if you reciprocate. The second kind of person, will do anything and everything, even the other party does not reciprocate. And third party is totally indifferent, they don't care. They said, which kind of lover are you? They were sarcastic to Krishna. Krishna said, first kind of love is not love only, it is simply a bargain. If I love you, then you have to love me. It's a bargain, it's a business. And then second kind of love he spoke about, where he just loves selflessly. He said that is the parents and the teacher and selfless worker. And third kind of people, they are indifferent. You do whatever, but they don't do anything. He said they could be akritagya. They are not grateful. Or they are apta kama, they are self-satisfied. Or they are guru drohi. Means, they don't have the the feeling of reciprocating. They only take facilities and don't do anything. Krishna said, I do not belong to any of this category. He said, I just went away from here just to glorify your love to the world. It is not that he is irresponsible, it is his heart. He feels, I cannot reciprocate. Your love is so great, that is how technically God is very powerful. But in regards to love, he is very poverty stricken in front of his devotees. If Rukmini says, the Brahmana, I have nothing to offer, I am eternally obliged to you, goddess of fortune. So similarly here we have to see, and the gopis became extremely humbled to understand that Krishna defeated them, that he is so grateful, he is so obliged forever that I can't repay. He wants to, but he can't. Therefore he said, even if I try with the life of Lord Brahma, I will not be able to repay the love which you offer to me. It is genuine. It is not if he had asked, should I give a car? Should I give a house? Will it satisfy the gopis? That is insulting their love. What will he give? What should he give to them to satisfy them? Because he had given himself to them, and he still was feeling that it is not sufficient. There was nothing he could offer. He could not offer Sudama, publicly, because he said he gave so much to me. I can only give him something which he cannot see, because my gift is much inferior to what he has given. I am ashamed to give. So therefore here Krishna's honesty to tell the world that I cannot reciprocate. And that itself is the greatest appreciation of the gopis' love. If anything, you buy gopis' love, that means you are minimizing their love. Krishna puts himself in an eternal obligation to the gopis, and therefore he reciprocates like that, always remaining subservient to the love of gopis. Yes?
You were talking about how we have to be materially responsible.
Also,
you were talking about the example of Indian independence. And also we heard about Arjuna and Dronacharya's difference in fighting the war, and how one was spiritually responsible and fighting for another was. So as devotees, how do we discriminate and balance our material responsibilities versus our spiritual responsibilities? Or how do we synthesize the two? What priority to give?
yeah, that is the clash. The clash between the matter and the spirit. There is a need of the body, there is a need of the soul. And that clash continues. I think, who is that? One of our devotees talks about the clash of Krishna. When he had to give up Vrindavan, he was thinking, can I stay in Vrindavan and also perform my duty of establishing Dharma? So there was a clash between love and duty. If he continues to love the gopis and stay in Vrindavan, then his purpose of coming to this material world is not fulfilled. He had come to establish Dharma, kill all the demonic people. But if he leaves Vrindavan, then he cannot fulfill the love of devotees, of Brajavasis. So that is how Dharma Sankat is there. So if Krishna exhibits that Dharma Sankat in this world and makes that choice, now I have to go. There is a time for me to go and establish Dharma. So this Iha and Para, in the Mahabharata again, when Yudhishthira Maharaj had to go and gamble, he asked Vidur, what should I do? If I go and gamble, that will destroy my Iha, means my wealth will be destroyed. And if I don't go and disobey my superiors, my Para will be destroyed. How will I do it? Vidur said, that is your responsibility. I can only tell you what you should do, what you are supposed to do. Because disobeying your superiors will destroy your future life. And you follow them and you play gambling, you lose your wealth in this lifetime. So that the clash between Iha Para, material life, when you give too much of importance, then you create disturbance to your spiritual life. And then, if you have immature understanding of Krishna consciousness, then you create difficulty in your spiritual life, in your material life. I remember in early days, some of the young devotees in our temple I am speaking, they thought, if you sleep more than required, that means even 6 hours they considered Maya, so therefore they would try to sleep only 2-3 hours. No, I don't want to sleep. Even if you are hungry, don't eat, because if you eat hungry, that means you are attached to bodily concept of life. So we created our own concepts of Krishna consciousness. So then what happens? Ultimately the material nature says, since you are not sleep for 6 days, now you sleep for 7 days because you are sick now. Because the body demands whatever it requires. But when you try to provide more than the body requires, that's what I was talking about, need and desires. We should work on our needs honestly, sincerely, and then we should work on the Atma Dharma also. There is Atma Dharma, there is Sharir Dharma, and there is Patni Dharma, and there is Putri Dharma. Like in one college again, somebody asked, how can Ram abandon Sita? How can he do it? I said, look, he had choice between being responsible to his subject or being affectionate to his wife. He was king and he was a husband. So which is more important here? Yes, if he was an ordinary husband, then he should be responsible to his wife. But he is not an ordinary person. He is a king. And if the king loses respect from the subject, then nobody will take him seriously. So he knew it was not right to abandon Sita. It was not about right or wrong. It was about two evil. Which one will you choose? So then he still continued to argue, but it doesn't make sense. I said, look, you have come here to study in your college. You abandon your parents and you must be a single son only. You had a choice to stay with your parents. Why are you here in IIT? And now from here you will come to America. And then you will get married also. Thinking that I will go back after 3-4 years. Then your wife and children say, Dad, we don't want to go. I can't handle India. So then there is a Dharma Sankat. If you want to please your parents at the cost of your children and your wife, or you please your wife and child, you displease your parents, what will you do? I said, that's what Ram had to go through also. I said, you are not evil. Either way, you are forced to take certain decision. It is nice that you could handle all of them together, but many times it doesn't happen as you assume. It doesn't happen. So you are not mean, you are not bad, you are good only. You have feeling for both the parties. You are responsible for your children and your wife, and you are responsible for your parents. And the parents are saying also, क्या अभी हमको भूल ही गया. Sometimes they make that comment also. हमने आपको इतना बड़ा किया, we made you so grow up, and you are completely forgotten. They use that emotional blackmail also. Then you say, okay, I'm going back. And the wife says, come on, you are being very insensitive. So what to do? So this is Dharma Sankat. So Ram, again he is playing this Leela. He cannot say to the Ayodhya Vasis, I only resign. You cannot resign because that's a responsible post. There is no question of resigning. And then he cannot say, hey, come on, anybody says like that, I will shoot all of them. It's not Iraq, right? So, our Shastras talk about this sensitivity. And understanding, being aware of this concept, that I need to always juggle between my material life and my spiritual life. And that struggle is very dynamic. And in the association of devotees, it will help us to balance. Sometimes it might go to one extreme and sometimes it might go to another extreme. But some other, if we are aware, when I am going to one extreme, then you try to play a balance. And life becomes, when you keep on playing like this, you feel, wow, I'm in circus, good, I've become expert. So otherwise, there is no formula, okay, this is the perfect formula, I follow this and it is. Otherwise life becomes very boring. If the perfect formula is there, somebody else leads your life and you just closely close your eyes and you walk and you find a perfect solution. It doesn't work like that. It has to be constantly playing back and forth, knowing very well in all these conditions I have to keep Krishna in the center of my life. Because successful material life cannot be successful without keeping Krishna in the center. You know, one brahmachari was asked by his uncle, he said, hey, come on, you got so much of education, why did you waste your all this degree? So he asked his uncle, you are so big, you think you are successful? Are you happy? He said, that's a difficult question. He said, I can say I'm successful but not I'm happy. He said, I'm not happy. He said, what is the definition of success? He said, part of being successful, being happy. So that means you are not successful also, nor you are happy also. You are trying to be, diplomatic in this. He said, you say successful, why you are successful? There has to be satisfaction that I am successful. You are being, you are playing this, I am successful but I am not happy. You think you are honest but you are dishonest. Because if you are actually successful, that means success means there has to be happiness. That means you are not happy and you are not successful. So uncle said, okay, you join. Hare Krishna. Last question. Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Prabhu, you explained about the differences between needs and desires. So there are different kinds of needs like physical needs, emotional, psychological, spiritual. So how do we train the mind to accept only those which are needed and how to differentiate between our desires and our needs in terms of these?
Yeah, one is at least being aware by understanding the scriptural, why Gita is so profound. Gita is very practical. If you understand, you try to discuss with devotees about the concept of Gita. At least on the intellectual level, we become aware. Okay, this is my desire. Now I am entering into the forest of desire. So if something goes wrong, Krishna is not responsible. No? So this is okay, this is my need. So at least when we are aware, I am not saying that immediately we can overcome desires, but at least when we get into the whole range of desires, when the suffering comes, at least we will not blame Krishna. The problem is blaming Krishna. And that was the difference between Kunti and Gandhari. That was the difference between Bhishma and Dhritarashtra. Bhishma in his life, apparently all completely selfless life. But even having that kind of selfless life, his decisions from a material point of view were not at all beneficial. But he never blamed Krishna. Come on, I was so selfless, I always worshipped you, but why you did not make me successful? He was able to keep that. Therefore, at the time of his departure, Jiva Goswami explains, Mahabharata explains, he regretted as a sincere soul that I made so many mistakes. So there was a regret about his mistakes and there was gratitude towards Krishna. So therefore he became a very beautiful personality. On the other hand, Gandhari, Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavatam, she was as good as Bhishma Dev for her austerities, her greatness. What happened? When all her sons died, the very Gandhari, when Duryodhana came to seek her blessings, he said, bless me that I will be victorious. She said, I cannot do that. She said, wherever Dharma, there will be victory, and wherever Krishna, there will be victory. She knew it very clear, so she couldn't bless Duryodhana to be victorious. But when all of her sons died, she raised this question to Krishna, you are God, right? And if you are God, you could have stopped this war. So her need, which was, saturated, in fact drowning with desires. And because of that, when it did not fulfill, when she had to see 100 sons were dead, Krishna came and he told in Hastinapur, in front of her also, if you just capture these 4 people, Duryodhana, Dushasan, Shakuni and Karna, the entire Kuru race will survive. He told Dhritarashtra, and Gandhari was there, but they did not have the guts to do it. Because there was unconscious desire, maybe my son will become the king. And she paid price for that. Rather than actually reflecting into her heart what she did, because of that pain, intense suffering, she blamed Krishna. He said, you could have stopped. And the Lord says, this is not Vedanta. You are also responsible. But she said, no, you don't tell me all these things. Therefore I curse you. Now in the entire Bhagavata and Mahabharata, the demons came to fight Krishna. And they got liberated. Because they were attacking Krishna. But Gandhari, when she became so self-absorbed, a misery made her so self-absorbed that she wanted that Yadava should also suffer the same fate as Kurus. She said, just like I saw the death of my children, I want you to see the death of the entire Yadava race. It's a sad conclusion of her life. She acted as an ordinary human being. Why? Because she saturated herself with... She was very sincere. And especially when the sincere people, they do not confess their anarthas. And because of that, they can actually blame somebody greater than them. That's what Gandhari did. And Kunti on the other hand, a very beautiful character. She made mistakes from a human perspective. Dropping, being inquisitive on how this mantra works. She called the demigod Suryadev came, gave her the sun. Naturally, she was afraid. She drowned the sun and never told anybody. She suffered. But she always, in that suffering also, she continued to be consistently worshipping Krishna. And she never blamed Krishna. Why Krishna, why you did this to me? So therefore, when we understand, at least on an intellectual level, that I got into a place where I was not supposed to. It was nothing but my desire and burned my fingers. So what should I do? At least I should not blame Krishna. So that is the first principle. And then in the association of devotees, regularly when we churn the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, Machita, Madgata, Prana, Bhodayanta, Paraspara, there is a greater chance of making less mistakes. There is a greater chance of seeing from a right perspective. There is a greater chance that we become more philosophical when we make mistake, rather than we become angry. We will keep doing those mistakes because we are in the material world. We still have our weak mind. We have our senses, and the sense objects are there. This will keep happening. Sometimes our children, they say when they go to watch match and India loses, they say, why Krishna did like this? I said, he never told you to go and watch the match. That is not his need. It's your desire. They feel very frustrated. This time only I went to see the match and India lost. And sometimes they don't eat food also. So they know that is not right, but then emotions are there. Then they ask this question, why? At least Krishna should have given this pleasure, at least I don't go to any other pleasure. So then we communicate, convince them, no, this is not what you should be doing. Or you go and watch, but be sportive. Because in sports, sometimes they win, sometimes you win. So you have to be like that. Otherwise, the whole thing is, the problem is not having desires also. The problem is having a specific expectation from Krishna. You fulfill this desire. 15 saal se jap kar raha. I don't ask. I will only continue to pray. Nadanam na janam. At least you should understand what I want. My heart desire is there. So at least one time you fulfill. So I am not going to pray that because I have been taught in the temple by my spiritual master and that devotee Bhagavan say kuch nahi mangna chahiye. So then Krishna is okay. And I will fulfill it. He does also fulfill. But then the problem is once he fulfills, it's like an intoxication. It becomes more intensified. That is the problem. So therefore, a philosophy is the best solution. Vedanta is the best solution to understand, okay, I asked for something which was not good and I got it. Krishna, please forgive me. Not that Krishna, what is this? At least intellectually. At least intellectually if you do, then we can control our emotions, because we have no control over our emotions. Mind and heart, they experience, and intelligence discriminates. When we are going through the experiences, at least the intelligence is kept aside, and the intelligence is, oh, this was not a right choice what I made. And that is the beauty of the Pandavas. Basically, what is the greatness of the Pandavas? That they had same emotions as we all have. But what was their strength? Their strength was the power to analyze in the right way. And what was the weakness of Gandhari? She was dharmic. But the weakness of Gandhari, when at the right time when she was supposed to utilize her intelligence was drowned in her experiences. In that matter, Ravana's wife, Mandodari, she is much higher than Gandhari, because when she saw Ram killed Ravan, and she was a very chaste, loyal wife, and she came crying that my husband is dead, and she cried tears, and she said, my dear husband, and she's crying tears, and she says that you are suffering for your own sin. She knew that her husband was sinful, but she never stopped being loyal to her husband. And she said, you are dead not because Ram killed you, because you offended a chaste wife like Mother Sita. She knew that being a widow was not good. So she had affection for Ravan, but she was intellectually very clear. Like Prahlad also, I like this one. Prahlad was culturally dependent on his father, and therefore when his father died, he said, my dear Lord, please forgive and give him liberation. Lord Narasimha said, already done. You don't have to ask for it. But Prahlad was intellectually independent. He disregarded father's instruction, but he never disrespected his father. So that is the beauty of bhakti. We are able to discriminate. Emotionally we will get affected. Even now, if India loses for Pakistan, we cry also, right? However, you become a good devotee, like one devotee was telling me. Very senior, very sincere, very dedicated. He said, Kabhi bhi bahar, he said, whenever I hear this old Hindi song, it touches the heart. He was very sincere. But he's not overwhelmed. Now you buy the tapes and secretly listen to all the songs. He doesn't do that. But he's living in an apartment building. Tons of service. We can't imagine also what kind of service he does. He said, when these songs are here, they touch my heart. What can I do? So touching heart you can't avoid. But what do you do after it touches? You go buy all the service. Then you use your intellect. That is the point. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your kind attention, for on weekdays also being here till late night. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.